Have you ever been curious as to why a lot of young people these days are rejecting capitalism in favor of socialism? Stick around. You'll find out the reasons why. Welcome to Balancing the Scales, the Economic Justice Report. This is your host, Vic Bernsdorf, and on today's show we're going to be talking about these topics. The best countries to raise your family in, the Chobani yogurt company, and why more and more young Americans are embracing socialism and rejecting capitalism. Some of my information today comes to you from Forbes.com, but let me start off by saying, according to a new study from the travel website Asher and Lyric, the United States is now considered, get this, the second worst place in the world to raise a family. We came in at number 34 out of 35 countries, only beating out Mexico. Topping the list of the best places to raise a family were these countries: Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And by the way, Finland is also ranked the happiest country in the world for the third year in a row. Let's watch this video clip and come back and talk about it.
What's up, guys? I'm Christina Thompson for 8012. Globally, about 250 babies are born every minute. Turns out the US may not be the best place for it to happen. Out of more than 25 wealthy countries studied for infant mortality rate, Scandinavian countries do really well. America ranks last. Those numbers remain pretty bad throughout year one. Then when you start looking at sending junior to schools, heading abroad seems like your best bet, specifically Asia. Singapore, Hong Kong, and South Korea top the list for best quality of education, especially in math and sciences. The US comes in at 28th. Okay, so not looking too patriotic here. What about the health of the parents? When it comes to maternity leave, more than 120 nations require it to be paid by law. America? Not one of them. Soon-to-be moms should seriously consider Sweden. 80% of your pay for more than a year of leave is mandated by the government. And you can still take an extra 13 weeks after that. Even our neighbors to the north at 50 weeks and 55% of your pay is better than the US goose egg. And let's not leave out Pops. He was there for conception, might as well let him help raise the bambino. Check out Canada, Sweden, and Croatia. Miles apart, but closely knit when it comes to giving dad more than half the year as paid paternity leave. Canada and Sweden again join France and the UK providing benefits for same-sex and adoptive parents too.
Pretty depressing stuff, isn't it? How can we keep calling ourselves the greatest country on earth? Okay, let me go back to the index. The Raising a Family Index ranked 35 OECD countries, which are basically developed countries. And the researchers looked at 30 statistics broken down into 6 different categories that identify favorable conditions for raising a family. Things like safety, happiness, cost of living, healthcare, education, and personal free time. So, which is the best country in the world for raising a family? According to their index, it's Iceland. It's also the safest country in the world. Sweden is the best priced country in the world to raise a family. Iceland achieved top 10 rankings in all categories and was considered to be number 1 in safety. Mexico came in at the bottom of the list as the worst country in the world to raise a family at number 35. But again, the US didn't fare much better. Like I said, it's at number 34. So there's hardly much difference, right? As far as cost is concerned, the US gets an F in our section, according to the authors of the study. In the overall cost of living index, the US placed last, performing twice as bad as New Zealand, which finished just ahead of the United States. And I quote from the report, American parents with average household income have to spend 32% of their income on child care costs alone, says Ferguson, one of the authors of the report. Compare that to Scandinavian countries where households only have to spend between 4% and 10% of their income on child care to raise a child. America also ranked worst for personal free time. We Americans really work long hours every year without any kind of government-mandated paid maternity leave, universal health care, sick leave, or vacation time. None of that is government mandated in this country. In fact, and I quote the authors, no other country in our study gives 0 paid maternity leave or offers 0 paid vacation time. End of quote. The U.S. also ranked badly in its happiness score. The authors point out that 1 in 5 Americans suffer from mental health issues each year, and the suicide rate in the United States has risen 33% over the last 20 years. Okay, this next story is about the Chobani Yogurt Company. I'll be taking my information today, a lot of it anyway, from the kgw.com website. There's an article in there called Idaho Company Praised for Parental Leave Policy. I quote now from the article. The Chobani Yogurt Company offers 6 weeks of 100% paid parental leave for all of its employees. It's offered to both moms and dads who've given birth, adopted, or fostered their child. The United States is the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't guarantee paid maternity leave for moms, let alone dads, according to the International Labor Organization, end of quote. Where did I hear that before, huh? Its records show that Swedish mothers and fathers receive almost 500 fully paid days off. Mothers in the United Kingdom get about a year of maternity leave, with 39 weeks partially paid and 12 weeks fully paid leave. So let's watch this video. I'll come back and talk about it.
In the modern workplace, hugging the boss may not be the first instinct of many employees.
Oh my God!
But there were hugs aplenty this morning at the Chobani yogurt plant in upstate New York. Company founder Hamdi Ulukaya made an announcement.
We used to work together. Now we are partners.
Real partners, financial partners. Ulukaya is giving his employees a 10% stake in the company when it goes public or is sold. It's a windfall that could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each.
That's amazing. Amazing. Who does that?
Completely unexpected. I think that everyone is so excited.
That's 2 plants and more than 2,000 employees. A move more Silicon Valley than upstate New York.
Why do this? You know, it's been my dream. I'd like to get back to them and say, you and this community and this country has been so great to us, and I'd like to return that favor back.
A wonderful CEO for him to do something like that, isn't it? Folks, this is an example of socialism working inside of capitalism, and it's typical of what B corporations that I often mention in the show are all about. Now, mind you, when I say socialism, I'm talking about giving back to the workers. Either giving back to the workers or giving back to the public. That's what I define as socialism. There's many different definitions of socialism, but one example is giving back to the public, giving back to the workers. Okay? Now back to Chobani. So a study from the National Partnership for Women and Families showed that men who take parental leave are more likely to be involved with the child's care in the long term and can even improve their children's performance in school. States like California, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Washington State, Minnesota, and New York already have paid family leave programs. Pretty much all Democratic states. What does that tell you? But in Idaho, where Chobani plant is located, there is no statewide family paid leave policy. And even unpaid leave under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act is not available for about 71% of Idaho workers, according to the National Partnership for Women's and Families. A quote now from the article. A Chobani employee, Yazirdo, says he wishes he had this precious bonding time with his now 22-year-old daughter, but back then he couldn't afford to be off work, a choice Chobani CEO Hamdi believes is just not fair for employees to have to make, since it was their hard work that helped make the Chobani company so successful in the first place, end of quote. Now let's take Hamdi's statement one step further. Okay? Isn't it the collective hard work of all of us Americans that helped make America great? So then shouldn't this family leave benefit really come from the federal government instead and be given to all Americans instead of just Chobani employees? Okay? And if that were the case, wouldn't American companies make more money if they didn't have to pay for this benefit by themselves? Okay? So why don't American companies push their congressmen and women for a national paid leave policy? I just don't get it. Okay? The point of the story is that when it comes to having parental leave, sick leave, maternity leave, and vacation leave, American employees are always at the mercy of the personal ethics of their employer when it comes to employees having any kind of economic security. No other citizen in any developed country has to deal with this kind of economic suffering, just us politically sheep-like Americans. Okay, now let's move on to our final economic justice story. Okay, so this last story has to do with young Americans flocking to socialism. A lot of my information on the story is coming from Forbes.com. The title of that article is "The Reasons Why Young Voters Are Embracing Bernie Sanders and Socialism." So, let me paraphrase, give you some excerpts from the article. Many young Americans these days are facing a terrifying realization that other generations didn't have to face. And that's a lot of young people now realize that they may be the first generation to have a lower standard of living than their parents. Right? They're getting really concerned about sweating, how they can be self-sufficient, how they can be financially independent, and live the American dream, which was promised to them by previous generations and their parents and grandparents, right? Almost as a birthright, right? Let's watch this video to see the younger generation's frustration with capitalism and why they're turning to socialism.
I've seen my parents work so hard for things that should have been afforded to them as soon as they got here, things like Medicare, things like affordable housing, things like access to secondary education.
My sister and I did not have health care for a long time. So I remember growing up just knowing I wouldn't be able to go to the doctor if I needed to.
My dad the other day actually asked me, he was like, "Why do you support Bernie Sanders?" He supports Donald Trump. I asked my dad, "When's the last time you've had health care?" He said, I have never had health care. And he's almost 60 years old. At the end, I just said, "Dad, I support Bernie Sanders because I support you."
The average college grad in debt now owes almost $30,000. 60% of personal bankruptcies are at least partially caused by medical debt. And wages are not increasing as fast as housing costs. Almost 40% of renter households are paying more than a third of their income in rent. According to the DSA, Democratic Socialists believe that capitalism has given too much power to too few people, and that there should be more democratic control over the economy.
I want to see workers have a say in the jobs that they do, and not simply be treated as cogs in a machine.
Everything you've just heard that those young people talked about just makes sense in 2020 America, okay? Imagine this common ritual, okay? Everyday parents in this country somehow allow their 17-year-old or 18-year-old young adults to sign binding student loan contracts that can't be forgiven in bankruptcy, by the way, okay, to pay for their college education, okay? Doesn't it make sense at that young age, when they can't legally drink or smoke, but they can sign their financial lives away? Does that make sense? A combination of huge student loan debt, low-wage jobs, and out-of-reach housing and rental costs are having a big negative impact on the millennial generation now. If someone doesn't feel financially secure about their future, you just hold off on making big purchases, big commitments. Getting married, buying your first house, having children, right? All those things. All those things that were once taken for granted by previous generations of Americans are now darn near impossible for a huge swath of young people, young Americans, to be able to afford. And not making these commitments hurts our economy as well. And to add insult to injury, because so many high school graduates are attending college, guess what? The value of their degree in many majors is not that really valuable anymore. Because there's a glut, right? Check this out. McDonald's now requires a bachelor's degree, 2 years of experience, just to be a cashier in their store. Okay? Used to be high school dropouts flipping burgers at McDonald's. But now, since so many young Americans have college degrees, the low-paying fast food companies can take their pick of tons of unemployed or underemployed college students. That's what we've been reduced to in this country now. That's what the middle class has been reduced to, or young people's choices have been reduced to. And if that isn't bad enough, a lot of young college-educated people have no choice but to work in the gig economy. Like what? Like baristas. Serving as baristas at Starbucks or driving for Lyft or Uber. Huh? So is it really surprising then that the benefits of socialism, as implemented by the social democracies in the Scandinavian countries, for example, are attracting more and more young people to that political ideology, right? So what do these social democracies offer again? What do these Scandinavian countries offer again that's so attractive to these young people? How about government-mandated parental leave, annual vacation, sick leave, and universal health care? Well, that's the show for today. Next week, I'll be talking about these 3 topics. What do American expatriates think of America nowadays? Why are Americans so afraid of their economic future? And why does the American middle class keep shrinking? If you'd like the topics I talk about on this show, please subscribe. Have a blessed day.